everybody and welcome back to my channel. I'm Sophia. So today I am doing a redo. I am redoing my Overlocker Lesson 1 threading video. I'm redoing it because I had quite a lot of negative feedback on the last one that I filmed years and years ago, where my camera wasn't as good as the camera now and it wasn't very clear enough on the really fiddly bits. And although loads of people said that it helped them, the majority of people just left me quite negative comments. So I'm redoing it and hopefully it will be a bit clearer. So before we start, I just want to mention that the overlocker I am using is the Janome 6234XL. So it's the model that's mid-range overlocker. There is a cheaper one. There's this one, and then there's a air threader, which is the dream, but I couldn't afford that. So I've got the 6234XL, which is the overlocker that I always recommended to our customers when we had the sewing school, because it's colour coded. A lot of overlockers and overlocker brands, especially if you buy the budget version, they're not colour coded. So I definitely recommend one that's got colour codes on it because it just makes the threading up a bit easier. But obviously the threading up might be slightly different to the overlocker that you have got depending on the brand. So watch this video, but also get out your manual that you got with your machine and then go through it with me. The other thing I want to mention is I don't want to be negative about anything, but one of the overlockers we used to see a lot in the sewing school for overlocker lessons was the Singer ones that you get from Aldi and Lidl. I actually had to stop having lessons on that machine if people brought those machines in, and the company that we used to use for our servicing also stopped servicing those models. Essentially, it's the luck of the draw whether you get a good one or a bad one. Some people are really, really lucky and they get them and they work fine and they thread up fine and the tension's fine. But the majority of them that came through the door were really hard to thread up and they just wouldn't work. And every time you change the tension, it would come unthreaded, and it was just a nightmare. And I used to, you know, not charge people in the end because they'd be there an hour and then we wouldn't get anything done. So I just stopped taking lessons if people had those machines. So it's just a warning to you that if you buy a really budget overlocker like that, it's luck of the draw whether it works or not, just to let you know. But hopefully this video will be helpful to you, and I hope it's a little bit clearer than the last one. The other thing I wanted to talk about is thread before we get started. So you don't want to use expensive Gutermann threads in your overlocker, or other brands, coats, whatever you're using, because you use a lot of thread, and if you're putting your normal sewable threads in there, you will be wasting so much money going through them. What you want to get is things like this, overlocker thread, cheaper cotton thread. I normally buy the Coats Moon threads on 1000 meter spools that look a bit like this. And then for the majority of my work, I buy 5000 meter cones of overlocker thread. This is the most cost-effective way of using your overlocker, but I definitely recommend 5000 meter cones for those of you who don't really change the color very much. If you change the colour a lot and you're making clothes and things like that and you always want to match your thread, I tend to be a bit lazy and I use either natural colours, black or white for my overlocker, and I stick to the big cones, and I just sort of go with whatever's closest to that colour for clothing. If it's a really odd colour, I might put in some smaller ones like the moon threads, and then I can change the colour a bit more. The other thing you can do is that you don't have to have all four in the same colour, especially if you've got like a mix of colours in your fabric. You can have a different spool on each one. Sometimes it's always good just to see how it looks first on the scrap before you commit to a certain colour. But yeah, 1000 meter ones, 5000 meter ones. Get the cheaper overlocker threads, don't use your nice sewing threads. Okay, let's get threading. Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at is this bar here. So on my overlocker, I can actually store this away down, and then when I'm using it, I lift it back up again, which is quite handy. And you can probably see on mine that mine still has color-coded tops to them. And that just helps me decipher between the 4 threads and where they're sort of going to go to, because you don't want all of this getting twisted up. if you didn't know, you have to thread your overlocker from right to left. So we always start with the lower looper, then the upper looper, then the right needle, then the left needle. There might be some differences with your overlocker where you do the upper looper, then the lower looper, and then you do right and left needle. But in general, as a rule of thumb, you always thread from right to left. So we need to start with the lower looper, which on my Janome overlocker is color-coded green. So you are going to use your tweezers. If your overlocker came with a pair of tweezers, use them, because you'll realise when we go along that tweezers are your best friends for threading up. So you are going to grab your lower looper thread, whichever colour you're using. Make sure it's above the thread, hanging on the right one. And then you're just going to put it round this looper first. So we go from back to front, pop it through the highest one, back to front, pop it through the lowest one. You see I'm using my tweezers for all the grabbing, which is very handy. And that is the first stage done. And you're going to repeat that every single time as we go along, but it always starts hanging on here to separate the threads, back to front twice to loop the loop on every single thread. Is the same all the way. The next part you'll come to is the tensioners. So we modify the tension to do different things on the machine, and I will come to those examples in other overlocker lessons that I'm planning. So on my overlocker, I normally have them all at around 3. So we're grabbing our lower looper thread and we're just going to put it through that tensioner, and then we're going to take it down. This again is the same on all the threads. You just pull it down through the tensioner. Okay, so once we're through our tensioner, we're just going to pop it behind this hook here. And then you can see on my color-coded version, we need to come down here to this hook here. Now this separates your machine from 3 to 4 threads to 2 threads, and so you'll change that depending on what stitch you're doing, and we just need to pop it behind there. So we just need to slot it, pop it behind to make sure it's through the hook. So we then come inside the machine with our lower looper ones, and I'm finding all the green labelled components. So my first one is this one here, and then my second one is this one here. And on this one there is a little arrow pointing upwards. You need to flick that to make the other components come out. So if these don't appear for you clear enough, you might want to make sure that your needle position is up, so your needles are up. So use your manual dial to raise the needles a little bit. So I'm going to pop it behind this little hook here, which is nicely labelled green. And I do have a diagram on my Janome that you can sort of see here, which tells me all the different places that it needs to go. So my next one isn't color-coded green, but it's this hook here. So use your tweezers and just gently pop it behind that hook. And then the last one on the green lower looper threading up is this knife here. And then you just need to pop it through that tiny eye. So your tweezers are your best friend when it comes to things like this. And that is the lower looper threaded. So all I do, just like on our machine, is we want it under the foot and out the back. So on mine, I tend to, just to make it quicker, pop it between the foot and the blade, so that I can just put it underneath and out the back, under the foot. And now we can move on to the upper looper. Upper looper. So I'm going to grab this one here, same as before, back to front through the top one, back to front through the bottom one, and down through the tensioner. Okay, so I've come down through the tensioner as we did before. Same again, pop it under there, that just to keep it separate from the lower looper. And I'm going to follow my burgundy colour code, so I just need to pop it through that hook there, and then I'm coming down here to this little hook here, and mine you just simply put it underneath and it should pop into place like that. So just like before, we've only got a few more pieces to put it through, and these aren't color coded. So again, I'm referring to my diagram, which is over here. So the first one is this tiny, tiny little hook here to keep it behind there. And then this knife here with this lovely tiny eye again, we need to pop it through there. But this time, you're threading it in the direction that you want it. So we're going from the front to the back, and now I can just use my tweezers to pass it to my hands behind so that it's underneath the foot and out the back. And that is the upper looper done. Now I've just got the two easy ones and then we're threaded. Right needle first, so mine is colour coded blue. Same again, from the top hook, we go back to front through the upper one, back to front through the lower one, down through the tensioner, and then we come to this section here. So I'm just going underneath this hook here, underneath this large hook here, and over the top of this little hook sticking out here. And once you've done that, you'll see that there is a gap on a right side and left side to separate our threads. So as we're doing the right needle, we're going to put that in the right side. And then there's, just like on your normal machine, there's a tiny little hook above the needle just to keep your thread near the needle. And once it's in there, you can thread it through the eye of your needle. And once again, once it's threaded, underneath the foot and out the back. Okay, last one is our left needle. So once again, from the top, we just want to thread back to front through the top, back to front through the bottom hole, down through the tensioner. So just as we did before, underneath that hook, over the top of the last hook, keep it on the left hand side of our separator, behind the little hook above the needle just to keep it nice and flat and close to your needles. And this time you're going to thread it through the left needle. And once you've threaded, once again, under the foot and out the back. Okay, so once we are threaded, I've got my 4 threads out the back here. So I'm just going to hold on to those. I'm going to switch my machine on. I'm going to lower my foot down so it's nice and flat, and then I'm just going to put my foot on the pedal. Once your machine starts forming a chain, you know it's threaded correctly. So as long as your chain looks like this, it will be threaded correctly, and you can now test out some different fabrics on your machine. So make sure you've got a good pair of tweezers, because that really, really helps. Your overlocker thread, don't waste your nice thread. And hopefully this is clear enough that you'll be threading your overlocker as quick as anything. There are cheat ways of knotting the thread together and passing that through your machine instead of threading it from scratch, but one, it could snap at any point or get stuck on something, and then you're going to have to rethread it anyway. And 2, don't forget how to rethread your overlocker properly, because if you keep doing the cheat way, you're not going to be as comfortable doing it and threading it properly. So I would just recommend threading it properly every single time to make sure that every hook is accounted for, all the tensioners are correct, and hopefully you'll have less problems with your machine. So I hope you found this video useful, and I really, really hope it's clearer than the last one. If you watched my previous one and you're now watching this one, please comment below if you think it's a lot better. I'm praying that it is better for you and clearer for you. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. Give this video a thumbs up if you found it helpful, and I will see you again soon for another video. Happy handmade, everyone.